Hey y'all, my name is Seneriz, but you can call me Vern. All of my friends in the lymphedema community do so. I currently serve as one of the Texas co-chairs of LE&RN. It is my honor and pleasure to be with you here in California this morning. This weather is absolutely incredible. As we landed from Houston, all wrapped up in compression, all I could say was, there's 100%, 80 to 100% humidity in Houston, and just getting here felt like I'd opened up a refrigerator door and stuck my head inside. If you don't know me or my story, lymphedema has run in my family for 113 years. So just pause and let that sink in. A lot of people do not recognize the word lymphedema, and they don't recognize that it's not a new disease. It's only something that we've begun to learn about. Both my father and grandfather had lower extremity lymphedema. My grandfather was bilateral. Bilateral means you have it in both legs. And my father was left leg unilateral. As part of my advocacy endeavors, I serve as a volunteer patient chair at Memorial Hermann Hospital in Houston, Texas. I help find speakers and topics for discussion at an in-person support group meeting that we have on a monthly basis. And periodically, I give out information on LE&RN. One of LE&RN's publications has a message that deeply and profoundly resonated with me recently. And Kathy Bates is on the cover of that message. It says, "To win a fight, you must first join it." So make no mistake, our time is now. We will rise up and demand increased awareness and education, dollars for research, and better overall care for all people with lymphatic disease. Allow me to explain why I'm personally committed to this cause. I'm in this fight for family. As I just said, both my father and grandfather had lower extremity lymphedema, and it took 24 years for my father to be diagnosed. I know what it is to watch a family member go from doctor to doctor, searching desperately for answers. My uncle had a heart transplant 10 years ago. I only recently learned that heart defects are tied back to lymphedema dischiasis. We didn't know that at the time. I now have 2 cousins with it, and I also have a son who hasn't developed lymphedema, but every day I check his legs. I'm in this fight because I remember being a little girl in the early 1980s when my father had 104 fever from yet another bout of cellulitis, and his flaming red leg was padded with ice directly onto the tissue. My mother had my brother in her arms and held my hand and refused for us to be separated in the ER. Extreme temperatures are the worst thing for lymphedema, but no one knew that at the time. My father would go on to suffer more than 100 bouts of cellulitis in his 43 years with lymphedema. They didn't have a name for the root cause. They simply called it cellulitis. I'm in this fight because from about the age of 10 until I went to college, I hand washed my dad's compression, which he faithfully wore every single day. I hated it, but they were so expensive that my mother didn't want to risk ruining them in the wash. I'm in this fight because in 1990, my father went to a surgeon to see if the swelling could be sucked out somehow. Why? Why can you not just stick a needle in there and take out the fluid? He was ahead of his time. The surgeon said, "Son, all I can suggest is that it's best for you to cut that leg off. It ain't doing you a bit of good." My mother began to cry, which angered my father. He said, "If you cut my leg off, what guarantees can you give me that I won't develop this swelling in the other leg?" The surgeon said, I can't guarantee you that." And he said, "Well, then you're not amputating me." I'm in this fight because in May of 1998, the same year that LE&RN was developed, I was driving down the freeway in Houston, Texas, and saw 2 legs that looked like my father's one leg on a billboard. By then I was 4 years into my own swelling. There was a 1-800 number on that billboard, and I literally pulled to the side of the road and wrote down the number. I called my parents at night and I said, I think we have something called lymphedema. And my father said, what the hell is that? I said, I have no idea, but there's this 1-800 number, and let's call it to see if we can get some help. So my dad and I went to that appointment together, and we were confirmed to have primary lymphedema that was hereditary. And my dad spent 8 weeks with me. He got treatment, and he was able to reduce his leg by 40%. The sad part about that encounter is that I was denied treatment. They told me that I was too mild and that I didn't have to worry about my swelling getting worse. I was lulled into a false sense of security that this disease was not progressive. I'm in this fight because in 2010 I went to a doctor who laughed in my face at the idea of exercising with bilateral leg lymphedema. Not only did I have to wait for my own LE to advance before anybody would treat me, I was then given misinformation. Research now shows that exercise is excellent for LE. I'm in this fight because in 2014, I could not wear shoes. That's when my father pulled me to the side and he said, Veronica, I'm only going to say this once, and you better pay attention. You have everything I didn't have. You have something called opportunity. You have an education, a job, health insurance, transportation, and the financial means to get help. You live in Houston, home to MD Anderson Cancer Center of all places. The only way you're going to get ahead of this is if you fight for yourself. You have all of these tools to help you, and yet what are you doing with them? Do you realize how many people don't have the opportunity in this world? So that's when I joined the fight and took action. I got help 2.5 miles away from my home and reversed my lymphedema enough to wear normal shoes again. It took me an entire year. I used to think that my family and breast cancer survivors were the only people on the planet that suffered from this disease. I could not have been more wrong. I had this idea for a blog called LyphieStrong, a dedication to my father and initially multi-generational families with lymphedema. I asked my father if he thought it was a good idea, and he replied, "Do you really think anybody will read it?" I said, "I don't know, I hope so." To date, the blog has reached over 120 countries I can't even pronounce. When I ran my first 5K, my father asked me, "What are you going to run for? Alzheimer's, cancer, ALS?" Took me about 3 days to think about it. I said, "I'm going to run for lymphedema. Nobody runs for lymphedema." And he slammed his fist on the table and he said, "That's right, it's our turn. I've got this cane and my leg is no good, so do you promise to run for me too?" I said, "I promise. I will run, walk, crawl for as long as my legs will carry me." To date, the Lymphedema Running Fitness Club has reached participants from the United States, Canada, Japan, Italy, Germany, and Australia. Sadly, on June 29, 2016, my father passed away from stage 4 metastatic adenocarcinoma, but not before battling one last bout of cellulitis. He fought it in the ICU with an IV going in each arm, but he walked out of that ICU with a walker 7 days before he died. And if he could do that, then I think I can do anything.
Well, I wanted to congratulate our advocates. Vern, that was truly beautiful, and it illustrates the power of what we do, those of us with lymphedema. when I heard the numbers from Bill when I first got involved, I just got really, really angry. And that's why I got involved. I've never done anything like this. I don't want to have lymphedema. And I was lucky in that I had the best treatment early, as you were saying, Dennis, and I had all the resources. But at the beginning, my arm was probably twice this size. I had to wear men's shirts and even in New Orleans, some kind of oven mitt. I don't know what it was. But so it hasn't been a pleasant journey, but the numbers have translated into people and faces. And more than that, people who have taken this disease that so profoundly affects their lives and has transformed it, used the stories that they have of their experiences to create empathy in people who've never heard of lymphedema. Sometimes I'm at a cosmetic counter and I don't know why I don't wear makeup, but you know, it's the packaging. And so I all look so pretty. Anyway, and if I'm wearing my sleeve, somebody asks me about it, I say, well, let me tell you. And but mainly what I want to say is I'm so grateful to all of you, not only for being here today, but for bringing me along with your journey. Mark Twain said, the two most important days in your life are the day that you're born and the day you know why. And I think, and I never expected this to happen, any of it, but the last 6 years after my double mastectomy have been the best years of my life. And now I'm realizing that it's because I'm among you, and we have a purpose, and we are translating our pain into power, and we're going to chip away at the hearts that don't understand us. We're going to chip away down to where human beings, I believe, has that God part in us, that when we connect that God part with empathy, we can do anything. People can understand each other. And especially in these troubled times when there's so much divisiveness, I never know how to, you know, we're all fighting against each other. It's just crazy. I want us all to stay together and stay focused on our fight, because listening to Dr. Patel last night, to Joe Diane in New York, Dr. Granzow, all of the therapists, we all feel like we are on the brink in the next 5 years of accomplishing so much real help. You know, so far we've been holding hands, and that's wonderful. But those of you who haven't sent your stories in, send your stories in to us, your pictures. Tell us everything, because I'm telling you, those are the stories that we told in Washington to the staffers. I grabbed, how do you say his Nadal or Nadal or whatever he was trying to get. They were voting that day. And I'm a pretty shy person in reality. And I grabbed him by the arm before he could get on the train. And I said, let me just tell you two things. Let me just tell you two things, okay? And he was like, but I think we're getting there. And it's an exciting time. I'll stop talking now, but I'm just so grateful to be here with you. And I thank God that I'm still here. Thank you very much.